Hi friends, it's Deanna here today, and today we're sewing up the Leonie wrap, top, and dress pattern. So today we're sewing up this version that I'm wearing. We're sewing up the long sleeve top version with no ruffle. This is such a cute pattern. I love how it turned out. So let's sew it together. Now, if you want to see how to sew up the dress version with the ruffle, check out our other tutorial where I show you step by step on how to sew that one up. Let's get started. All right, we're gonna start with our back, and what we want to do is, all my pieces, I kind of clip them together depending on who they go with, just so I know exactly what those are for. So they're kind of put aside, but we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna start with our back. I'm using this beautiful fabric that kind of sheds a little bit, but that's okay because we're going to finish off the edges when we're sewing, so it doesn't do that while I'm wearing it. It's not really shedding, it's just the edges, the raw edges fray, because it just frays easily. A lot of wovens do that. So anyway, all that to say, this is my back here, and as you can see, I have my darts marked by pieces of paper. Because this fabric is so dark, sometimes it can be kind of hard to see what when you write on the fabric. So because I did a projector, I went ahead and projected that on and marked it with a piece of paper, and then I plan to go ahead and remove it and use that as my guide for making my dart. So what you want to do is you're going to pinch right here at the top. So we're going to grab where those top of those darts go, the back darts. Here's my one top and here's my bottom. And I'm kind of gonna pick up like this. Now my piece is right at the middle, so I'm gonna kind of fold it in half so it kind of goes from one side to the other, right? Make sure I'm right in the center here. Just makes it easier for me with dark fabric, but you can definitely mark it with chalk or whatever kind of pencil you want to mark it with. And I'm just gonna go right here and come from this angle here to the other side here. Okay, and now I just got that center point marked here. And I'm just gonna mark that center point by going out so I know exactly where that center point is, because that's where we're gonna start when we're working on our dart. We're gonna start at that center point and go down to the edge, go back from the center point and go down to the other edge. So then I can go ahead and mark the rest of the dart. Now, you don't have to cut a piece of paper like I did. You can just definitely just draw it on there. Might be easier like that, easier for some people to do that. I just find that marking it with a piece of paper helps me sometimes. And now I have my marks. I'm gonna follow the marks of my actual pins to show me exactly where I'm gonna go. So I'm gonna start right here at the top of this pin and work my way towards this pin right here. And then I'm gonna go back here and work my way towards this pin right here. And I'm gonna do that on both sides. All right, make sure that when you're sewing that up, you're just sewing the layers that you need to sew up. So these two layers, nothing else is cut underneath. We're going over to our sewing machine to sew it up. Okay, so I'm gonna start at that center point. So this is where I start, and I'm gonna go down towards that, the front or the bottom point here, and I'm just slowly going down, following that line. And as I get closer, I'm gonna lengthen my stitch. I'm gonna lessen my stitch. I'm gonna make it shorter, a shorter stitch. And then I'm gonna come out and leave a little tail because I'm gonna tie that tail later. You don't go back and forth. You don't stitch back and forth, you just leave the tail. And then we're gonna do the same towards the other side. So I'm gonna go back to that starting point again. And then we're gonna go back towards the other side. And we're gonna do that for both darts. All right, so once you've sewn those darts in the back, we're gonna place our back pieces right side up on our mat, and we're gonna match up our back seam. We're gonna sew up that back seam right sides together. I am going to be using my serger. The serger I have has a chain stitch, and that chain stitch, what it does is it does a straight stitch, and then it goes ahead and finishes the raw edge. which is really great because then I omit that step where I have to finish up the raw edge. If you are doing it with a serger, what you're going to do is you can do it two different ways. You can go a straight stitch all the way down and then go back with your serger and serge the raw edge, or you can go ahead and open that seam allowance and then serge the two raw edges of the seam allowance. You can go ahead and serge the edges first and then sew a straight stitch, or you can do the same thing too with a sewing machine. If you don't have a serger, you can do a zigzag stitch to finish off the edge of the fabric. All right, once that's done, you want to steam. I also did steam my darts out so they lay nice and flat, and I steamed that back seam. You can't really tell, but you've got a straight stitch going and then a finished edge there. Then we're going to mark our wearer's right side seam at the waistline, because we're going to use that to leave a gap for our tie to go through later. So then we're going to turn this right side up, our fabric right side up, and we're going to grab our front pieces, and we're going to match them up at the shoulder seam. As you can see here, you have the one side that goes straight, and then the other side that has the sleeve. So make sure you match those up. You don't want to put it on the wrong side. And you're going to do that for both sides. We're going to go ahead and sew on those shoulders. And again, you can do the straight stitch first and then finish off the edge, the two seams, or I'm going to do it on my chain stitch on my serger. All right, it is very important that any time that you sew a seam with your woven fabrics, you go ahead to your iron and give it a good steam. That's going to help place that, give it like a really nice look. And that's what you want. So now we're going to do our side seams, but what we're going to do is we're going to have to leave a little space here for our tie. So we're going to start at the top on the wearer's right, and we're going to go down to that mark that we created here. So I'm going to actually put a pin here because I'm marking it all with my clip. So I want to know exactly where to stop. And then we're going to go an inch down from that and mark it, and that we're going to leave that gap there. So we're going to start back up here and sew the rest of the edge. So start at the top, go all the way down to the first mark, leave a gap, start at the second mark, and go all the way down. And then on the other side, the left side of the wearer's left side, we're just going to go all the way straight down the side. For the full side, the left side, I'm gonna do that with this machine here, the one that has the chain stitch. On the other side, I'm gonna do it with my sewing machine and my regular serger, just because I wanna, first of all, I wanna show you, but second of all too, because I wanna open this seam allowance here when I'm gonna leave the gap. So with the other machine, I won't be able to open the seam allowance. So I wanted to make sure that I can open my seam allowance for creating this gap here. So I sew to my first stop, and I'm actually going to do a back stitch, and I'm going to pick up my stitch and go to right underneath it on an inch below it and start. I'm going to go here to my ironing board and open up that seam allowance, and then I'm going to go to my serger and finish off those raw edges. And you see this little gap here? That's my gap where I'm gonna insert my tie. But I gotta go finish off those raw edges anyways, because see how it's already kind of starting to fray? I don't want my fabric to fray. So I'm gonna go to my serger and finish off those raw edges. Now from the wearer's right side of the fabric, we're gonna go right where we left that gap there, and we're gonna go around it, top stitching that seam down. Just a straight stitch. I'm just gonna pivot at the bottom, and you can go back and forth to reinforce at the bottom and at the top. I like to do that. And then turn around. And that is where your strap is gonna go through right there. Whoop. Hold on, let me show you. There it is. All right, so now we're gonna do our binding around our neckline. If you can see here, our neckline starts where it curves and then it's gonna go straight to the side, goes all the way around the back seam and then around the front again, and it stops right here at the peak because this is our front piece here. So we're gonna attach our binding to that piece. So what you wanna do is we're doing single fold binding, and you wanna just go ahead and go take that to your machine, and we're gonna open up that binding and we're gonna place it right there at the beginning place. And we're just going to, you can even, if you wanna leave a little gap, you can always trim it, that's fine. We're gonna go right over the fabric, right sides together, and we're going to straight stitch right at that first folded line right there of your binding, all the way around to the other end. And you can pin it if you want to. If that makes it easier for you, you can. It's up to you. I always make sure that I see my fabric so that I know that I'm attaching that right to that fabric. And not like coming off the edge or anything like that. Now once that's done, we're gonna carefully trim and just snip the allowance around here, around the neckline, to allow that to kind of fold nicely. Now remember, don't clip your threads. And what we're going to do is, with that seam here still folded, we're going to steam my seam allowance towards the binding. So I'm gonna go do that. Then we're going to go to our sewing machine. We're gonna flip this over and understitch along where the binding is, so that that seam allowance there, it's attached to the binding there, because this binding is gonna go, we're gonna attach it later like this, and we want, doing that understitching is gonna keep this binding from trying to like fold out and for you to be able to see it when you're wearing it. All right, so now we're going to fold that. So that folded bias is still folded, and here's where we top stitch. We're going to fold that all towards the back and keep that bias folded. So we're gonna just fold it towards the back, because then we're gonna go from the front and top stitch it in place. I love how this looks. It just gives it such a nice look, like a finished look on the inside. And honestly, you can do any color binding. I should have done a fun color. I just went with gray. I could have done black, but I wanted you to see what I was doing. Also, I was thinking I should have done red, but the only red I had was double bias binding, and it called for single fold instead of double fold, so it's okay. I think it's still really neat though. You can see here on the inside, you can see that top stitching line there, and then on the other side, there's a top stitching line right there. All right, I'm doing the straight hem, so we're gonna start by folding 3/8 of an inch in at the edge. And then we're gonna fold another 3/8 of an inch over for a total of 3/4 of an inch. And that's going to be our hem here. We're gonna hem that down. This is the side, and we're gonna do the same for the bottom. All right, now we're gonna work on our straps, and you should have, I'm gonna put my dress aside, and you should have 2 long straps and 2 short straps. And we're gonna grab both of our short straps and face them right sides together at that short raw edge and sew it together. And then do the same thing for the both long straps, sew them together at that short raw edge. All right, for my straps, we're gonna go ahead, and this is my wide strap, so I'm going to fold it right sides together and sew one short edge and then all the way across, and leave the other short edge open for turning. I'm gonna trim that extra allowance here, just trim the allowance, and then I'm gonna flip the strap over. All right, we're gonna go give it a steam, and then we're gonna go to our sewing machine and top stitch both sides. All right, time to attach the straps. We're gonna grab the short strap and we're gonna fold it 1/4 of an inch at the end, and we're gonna place that on the wearer's left side. And this is the corner edge here of the dress where it comes down here. And we're gonna place that right in that spot, and we're gonna top stitch it there. So as you can see, this is the neckline here. When you turn it around, you're gonna top stitch here at the edge. So you'll have, this is the short strap on the wearer's left. Now the long strap, you're gonna put it on the other side. Here's my front piece here. We're gonna put that on that side right there. That's gonna be my long one. You're gonna grab where the raw edge is, fold 1/4 inch down and place it right on that side. And we're gonna top stitch from the right side. Top stitch it right there. While I'm at my machine, I'm gonna lengthen my stitch, and I'm going to put in a gathering stitch at the top of my sleeve. So I'm just gonna do a long basting stitch. You can do 2 stitches. I'm just gonna do 1 because my fabric is really thin, and I think you'll do a good job gathering. And make sure that you mark the back of your sleeve. This is the back of my sleeve. I'm putting that same gathering stitch at the bottom of the sleeve. And we're gonna prep our sleeve cuff by folding 3/8 of an inch on 1 inch to the wrong side. And then while that's still creased, we're gonna fold down the middle, wrong sides together, and create that memory crease right there. And do that on both. I'm gonna grab my sleeve and my cuff, and I'm gonna pull on that gathering stitch on so that I gather my sleeve to be the same width as my cuff. Make sure those gathers are even. Okay, and then we're going to attach the unfolded edge to that bottom. So you're matching right sides together, that bottom edge to the unfolded edge. It's gonna be so cute. All right, once that's done there, you can remove that basting stitch so it's easier to remove now rather than later. And then we're going to go ahead and place these 2 side seams together. And we're gonna open up this folded edge here because we're gonna sew it unfolded here. We'll fold it back up when we hem it, but for right now, we want it to be unfolded. And we're going to sew those side seams right sides together. Do the same for the other sleeve. Ooh, we're almost done. Okay, so now what we can do, now once our side seams are finished here for our sleeve, we're gonna fold that sleeve cuff over. Make sure that seam allowance, that seam here at the bottom that you already pressed, that memory crease is gonna go right over your seam here on the sleeve. So that seam right there, you're gonna cover that up with that place right there on that place, and then you're gonna pin it, and we're gonna sew it from the other side, from the right side. And we're gonna do the same on both sleeves. All right, last but not least is attaching your sleeves. So we're gonna grab our bodice and we're gonna place it here and we're gonna find our sleeve that matches it. Okay, so if I turn this sleeve right side out, this part right here is the back, so that goes on this side. Let's turn this one right side out and the back should fit. See, this is my back marking. That should be against your back. So that means that this is my sleeve for on this side. We're gonna match up that seam here at the bottom. Match them up. And then we're gonna match that notch at the top. Right sides together, that top marking. And then we're going to gather our sleeve to fit evenly into this arm side. So we're gonna pull in that gathering stitch and just gather lightly so that it'll fit. And you all, we're gonna sew that and we'll be done. I'm so excited. All right, let's sew that up. All right, friends, we are done with this cute top. I just love it. I love the little detail of the binding on the inside. It fits so nicely. The straps are so nice. So here's the strap. You place it right through that gap that we created here, and this is the front strap. You can tie it in the back. You can tie it in the front. I kind of like it in the front with the little bow here. I think it's so cute. The sleeves are so adorable. Now remember, if you want to see the dress version with the ruffle and with the short sleeve, make sure you follow our next video where I'm going to show you how to sew that one up. So comment, like, share, subscribe if you haven't so you never miss any of our tutorials. Go grab your beautiful pattern. You're gonna love it. Come back and sew it up with me, and I'll see you all next time.